All right, I'm going to call this meeting to order. Alguien que necesita interpreta para la Junta. And do we have any translation requests?
Yes, Trustee Good, we have translation requests, and that's being provided on a separate WebEx.
Great, perfect. I would like to ask
Jose.
Board Member Pace to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Board Member Pace. Does he hear us? I don't hear him.
Are you muted?
Well, I will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance then. We have technical difficulties.
Thanks so
Ready?
much.
Begin. I pledge allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United
of the United
States of America
States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have to do the best we can under these circumstances. Next, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
This is BC, so moved.
Is Enrique second?
Sorry about that.
And all those in favor, we need a roll call, please.
Trustee Doyle,
Yes.
Enrique Diaz,
Yes.
Gwen Fioc,
Yes.
Mark Good,
Yes.
James Pace.
Yes, if you can hear me.
Yes, thank you. Linda Paceno.
Yes.
Thank you.
Next, I believe I don't think it's on here, but I believe we need to discuss the issues that about decisions in closed session. And we did unanimously vote in favor of appointing 2 employees. And I will let Dr. Flores talk about that.
Thank you, Mr. Good. I'm very excited to announce to the board and public that in tonight's closed session, the board approved the appointment of 2 assistant principals in our district. It was unanimous vote to approve these appointments. And both of our new assistant principals are here with us tonight, and I want to introduce both of them. So I'd like to introduce Jonathan Pena-Layar, who is from the San Diego area, and he's going to be the new assistant principal at South Valley Middle School. He's been a teacher in the Poway Unified School District for many years. He went to both UCSB and UCSD and has earned his doctorate. So we're very excited. He's currently an EL coordinator at Twin Peaks Middle School and has extensive experience at the middle school level. So we're very excited to welcome Jonathan to our team. And I think you wanted to just say a word. So go ahead, Jonathan.
Thank you, Dr. Flores. Hello, everyone. Thank you all so much just for the opportunity. And I'm excited to be able to join the Gilroy team.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Good job. Welcome.
Thank you.
I'm equally pleased to recommend our new assistant principal at Gilroy High, Jeremiah Brentner, who actually lives much closer. He lives in Gilroy and has children in our district, but he's been at San Benito High School for many years as a chemistry teacher. And in fact, he's the lead of his area. And he has extensive experience starting back in his college days, right after that, where he actually went out on a boat for quite a while. I was fascinated with this because I love marine biology, and 5 or 6 years collected data and supervised interns, and that he says that's been invaluable to him in his teaching career. And so we're really looking for, he's done extensive work with PLCs, PBIS, and a few other areas that we think are going to be a real strength at Gilroy High. So we're very excited to welcome Jeremiah to our team. Congratulations, Jeremiah. Would you like to say a word?
Yes, sure. Thank you, Dr. Flores. That was a great introduction. Wait to share more stories with you. I can't excited to be joining the administrative team at Gilroy High School here in the town where I get to live. So I'm really excited to become a bigger part of our community and to help lead Gilroy High School into our next chapter of growth.
Well, welcome to our team. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Well, congratulations to you both. And for the record, both motions to appoint were made by Trustee Pacino and seconded by Trustee Diaz.
Thank you.
I'm sure we'll be seeing much more of you later, hopefully in person someday. Next, we have public comment. Members of the public may address the board on the special meeting meeting below. In accordance with board bylaw 9323, individual remarks will be limited to 3 minutes each unless otherwise stipulated. For the purpose of these items, the total time designated for public comment will be limited to 45 minutes. And we will have the public comment at the conclusion of the presentation. And
Right. So I just
7A.
thank you. Thank you for clarifying that, Mr. Good, because all of our comments are about our action item relating to our plan for fall 2020. And I appreciate Melanie Corona and Natalie Martinez for organizing them because we have quite a few public comments. I don't know if you wanted to say anything about the amount of time we'll allocate for public comments.
Yeah, there's going to be a total of 45 minutes for public comment. It's difficult because things move slower when we're doing it online, and the original proposal has now been withdrawn and modified substantially. So a lot of those public comments aren't really going to be relevant to what we're looking at today. So as a result, we've asked that we have a cross section of comments actually read. So, and that's why we're limiting the time to 45 minutes.
And after talking to Melanie and Natalie, many of them are not 3 minutes in length, so we may be able to get through quite a few of them during that 45 minutes. But I ask that we make our presentation first. So Lucy's going to bring up a PowerPoint that will that myself and cabinet members will be presenting to the board. So I'd ask Lucy to bring that up right now.
Actually, it's me, Dr. Flores. This is Melanie, and I'm just waiting for presenter rights.
Okay.
So as soon as I get them, I will. There we go.
Good.
This is Enrique with the point of clarification.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the new PowerPoint up on the website as well?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Yeah, we posted it earlier. Okay, so let's go on to the second slide, Melanie. So as you know, board members and public, we are here this evening to talk about the Gilroy Unified School District's plan for fall 2020. And I wanted to start with some background information because I know we have many people watching who probably weren't at the June meeting when I talked to the board about our planning process and our planning committee. So the first thing I'd like to do is welcome everyone who is watching our board meeting this evening. It's great to have so many people participating. And I want to thank everyone for the feedback that we've received over the past week. As I mentioned, it's extensive. But going back to mid-May, I formed a fall 2020 planning committee. 30 people are on that committee. It's comprised of all of our bargaining units, various positions, teachers, classified staff, paras, executive members of our 3 bargaining units, principals, cabinet members, a board member, nurses, and a counselor. So we had a very large committee, the planning committee, and then 3 subcommittees that were formed from the planning committee met for almost 2 months, and they worked very hard on our fall 2020 plan for reopening. And I want to personally thank all the members of the planning committee because they just did an incredible job giving up vacation time, coming in later in the day and long meetings to make sure that everyone's input was considered in this process. Additionally, we surveyed parents, staff, and students, as you know, in late May, early June, and we had a very good response rate, and we asked them questions about our distance learning program in the spring and questions that related to going forward. We finalized our plan after the Santa Clara County Office of Education and the Santa Clara Public Health Department released their guidelines, which were given to us on June 30th. So we've had about 2 weeks to review those guidelines and finish up our plan. Next slide. Our initial proposal, as was presented last week, was for elementary students to return 5 days a week, middle school students to be on a hybrid model, which would mean 2 days in school and 3 days in distance learning. And for high school, we are recommending distance learning for 5 days. We attached the Public Health Department's report because we felt it was really important that people understand the difference in the guidelines by grade, by level, elementary, middle, and high school. And we based our proposal on those guidelines that came from the Public Health Department, which indicated that younger students are at a much lower risk of transmitting COVID-19 to children and adults, which is, many people have asked, well, why did you recommend 5 days for elementary? That was a big part of our reasoning of the information that we were given by the Public Health Department. And in fact, this Friday, they are doing a webinar on the science behind that recommendation. But it also was very much tied to what we felt as a committee and as cabinet members about providing the best instructional program possible at all levels. And we relied on the experiences that occurred during the spring distance learning program. And we considered the developmental level of students among many, many other factors that were considered in this planning process. Next slide. You know, board members, as well as we do, that we received a lot of public comment and emails about our proposal. And after a very long 3 or 4 days of considering all of the input that we received, so we've received input from all 3 of our bargaining units who surveyed their members, had a very high response rate, and the majority of the staff and all of our employee unions do not believe it's safe for them to return to school. We also have, of course, been following the numbers, as everybody is in our county and our state right now, particularly since the governor yesterday put in a statewide change that affects everyone, that put into place a number of restrictions, which is definitely affecting our county. Yesterday, salons opened, today they're closed. So there are a lot of changes that have occurred because of the governor's executive order in the last 24 hours. And he made some very pointed comments about distance learning. And from what we understand, there may even be some direction from the state on distance learning that will be coming soon. We also have had some recent cases of COVID-19 in our school community. So we really took a step back, reviewed all the input that we received, in particular the union input representing most of our staff, and we are now recommending a different plan. So this is the meat of this presentation, our current proposal. So our current proposal for all students preschool through 12th grade is for students to return to a distance learning program. And the question has already been asked, how will distance learning work? We met with my Superintendent Parent Advisory Committee yesterday for 2 hours. They had great questions about distance learning and input. We've met with other parents in the last week, and so we really appreciate the feedback that we received from them. But it's going to be, distance learning starting this fall is going to be very different than distance learning last spring. As you know, literally overnight, we went from being told on March 13th that schools were closing to Monday, March 16th, and all districts were expected to implement new plans for learning, and that all had to be done virtually. And there were also minimal guidelines from the state on distance learning. That's all changing. So several recent bills have passed that are going to lead to major changes in distant learning plans in school districts this fall that have very strong accountability measures. There will be more consistency in what is offered and how it's offered thanks to this new legislation, which requires daily interactions with students. So Dr. Padilla and Ms. Bierman are going to provide an overview of our distance learning plan. This is a high-level overview. And Mr. Mace and Mr. Winslow are going to review the new guidelines for the state for district learning plans that involve numerous accountability measures. After these presentations, we'll be happy to answer board member questions. And as I've already mentioned, we have quite a few public comments that will be read into the record. So I'd like to ask Dr. Padilla and Ms. Bierman to cover our program for the fall, which, by the way, begins on August 12th.
Good evening, President Good, members of the board, and Dr. Flores and the community. We are here to talk about some of the key features of distance learning for the 2021 school year. And many of these features pertain to all levels, elementary and secondary. I first wanted to state that we appreciate and acknowledge all of the efforts that teachers did during the springtime and a very short notice, tremendous efforts to support our students in the distance learning model. And now we have an opportunity to again serve them this way, and we are very committed to doing our very best to make sure that all students' needs are met. We did get feedback early in the spring or later in the spring from parents and students and staff about distance learning, and that supports some of the work that we're doing going forward, as well as what Dr. Flores mentioned in our recent interactions with some parents. But one of the things that emerged was the desire for a more consistent program within schools and across schools. And so that is one of the key features of our program. These, again, are some things that we would find in secondary model as well as elementary: a daily schedule, attendance and participation monitoring, as you will hear from Mr. Mesa and Mr. Winslow, are part of the requirements. Grades, which were not a part of the spring program, will be required, as well as progress monitoring, feedback to students as well as parents, and opportunities for parents to understand their students' progress in the distance learning model. Also, using our adopted curriculum, there are many tools, online components of our adopted curriculum that lend themselves very well to a quality instructional program in the virtual environment. Again, you see that consistency in the daily teacher interaction that Dr. Flores mentioned. Principals will have a key role in the oversight and monitoring of the distance learning program. So they will be involved in, invited to and going into the Google Classrooms, setting some expectations in terms of the delivery model, as well as supporting collaboration for teachers. And all of our models call for an opportunity for teacher office hours. In those office hours, students and/or families can connect with the teacher, ask questions, get clarification, or additional support for their student. Next slide. Thank you. English language development for English learners is a requirement. It's a current requirement, and whether we're in person, but also it is a requirement in the distance learning model. So we have in our schedules opportunities for teachers to work with those designated students. And intervention and student support is also a component of the new legislation, and it is very much an interest on the part of staff as well to be able to provide this to students. Student support is for targeted students, those that have an IEP, as well as foster youth, homeless, and some of our other targeted populations. And Dr. Flores already mentioned about the expectations, but that's also for student participation. In the Assembly bill, there are requirements for districts to actually re-engage students who are not present for 60% of the week. In other words, to reach out to them and to get them back to be re-engaged in the classroom. Also, opportunities for us to connect students regarding their non-academic needs, social and emotional needs. And I already mentioned the teacher collaboration, as well as ongoing professional development. We had a great deal of professional development in the spring, but we are ready to provide more in an ongoing, consistent manner on the online platform tools, as well as ways for best practices for distance learning. And so Dr. Padilla and I will just highlight a few of the differences in terms of elementary and secondary. Most things, as I mentioned before, are the same. But in elementary, we have looked at some potential schedules. Again, these are just draft schedules. We have a lot of work to do working with our teacher groups, but we want to make sure that there is a blend of whole group and small group instruction. Again, at that elementary level, it lends itself much better to smaller groups of students, particularly at the primary level, and it allows for teachers to really zero in on the specific needs of those children. I mentioned intervention already. We already have plans as part of our teaching and learning planning committee. Our subcommittee in elementary suggested that we convene a group of teachers to really focus on the key standards, knowing that we cannot deliver curriculum in the same manner as if we were in person. So being able to get down to the essential standards and get some consistency about grade level, across grade levels, we want to work with a group of teachers to define that. At the elementary level, we are also looking at a common progress monitoring tool and system that will allow us to look at student progress in the virtual learning model. Dr. Padilla.
And for the secondary model, we will be returning to a standard A through F grading policy that is established by our board. We also are planning on offering opportunities for virtual activities for our students for some of that social emotional well-being for everyone involved, and especially for our incoming seniors, to do our best that we can in this new virtual world to give them some of those senior opportunities that they might have had maybe a little bit differently, but still would have had in a brick and mortar setting. We also are offering opportunities for small group and individualized support for all students in all classes, and we are offering our full curriculum for 6th grade through 12th grade.
Good evening, Dr. Flores, and good evening, board and members of the public. The next series of slides, Mr. Winslow, our assistant soup of HR, and I will cover, and it will really highlight the important requirements of distance learning. So as Dr. Flores mentioned, in the middle of March, we were all compelled to shut down our schools in an effort to curb the spread of the virus. So that's, think of it as building a plane as you're trying to take off, right? It's not the best situation that you found yourself in. So obviously a lot of the legislation requirements weren't in place for something like that. Now it will be different, and it's expected to be different. There's clear expectations in the next fiscal year, in the next school year for 2021. Specifically with the annual instructional minutes, daily instructional minutes, and the minimum requirements of an instructional day and what that entails. Next slide, please. The legislature, as it was previously mentioned, the Senate bill does have some flexibility in terms of how we meet those requirements. It could mean a combination of things, distance learning, hybrid model, etc. The important thing is that the legislature does allow flexibility in how we deliver our instruction, but also provides us with clear accountability measures that were simply not in place in the middle of March. Next slide. And those accountability for the distance learning requirements are really specific. So we've tried to summarize them in this one slide. And so this will apply, of course, for our program come August 12th. We will confirm and provide technology for all students that need it. The content will be grade level content standards with the proper rigor and relevance that you would expect. No different than if it was equivalent to an in-classroom instruction. We're expected to support, of course, those students are that are currently at below grade level, English learners as an example, students with disabilities, our foster students, our homeless youth. Again, supporting those students. There's actually a disproportionality requirement that we're also going to be emphasizing on that as well, making accommodations for those IEPs, individualized educational plans for those students with special needs, our English learners, looking at reclassifying them as you would normally do based on their achievements. And the key requirement here for distance learning is daily live interaction with teachers and their classmates. So we think that that's really important. It sets the foundation really at what the model will deliver this time, because again, we're no longer building the airplane as it's essentially taking off. So our assistant soup of HR will now review some of the key attendance requirements that we also have to take note of in distance learning.
Thank you, Mr. Meza. And for the benefit of the public, two laws were passed that really guide this work. So Assembly Bill 77 and Senate Bill 98, which was a trailer bill that followed up. And as Mr. Meza stated, the fall 2020 distance learning did not have these strict accountability guidelines provided by the state as it was in response to the pandemic. These two laws really mandate that the school district start to take accountability for attendance of students. And in the distance learning model, you can see on the slide, attendance is that engagement, that daily live interaction with students and teachers and their peers as defined under those two pieces of legislation from Sacramento. One of the key things that we wanted to highlight for the board is that within AB 77 and SB 98, there is discussion of a tiered re-engagement strategy plan that the district has to come up with. So for those students who are not successful, who are struggling, some of our neediest students are foster youth, and some of those students that really need some type of in-person support, we really have to come up with a plan. And part of that plan, and you can see bold in red, when feasible, attempting to transition that student back to some type of in-person support or instruction, which means that we'll probably need to explore as a cabinet and as the committees, we'll have to explore ways to somehow bring back some students for that tiered structured support. So these laws very clearly say, what are the responsibilities of the district if something is not working as well as it possibly could, and in the law, in-person instruction to the extent feasible. That's the quote from the law. So that's going to be a part of ongoing plans as a tiered re-engagement strategy for some of those targeted populations that really need that additional support of a live person.
That concludes our presentation. And Mr. Good, I don't know if board members want to ask us questions first, or is it the will of the board to hear the public comment first?
So we have 45 minutes probably that we're going to fill with public comments. Would the board like to reserve their comments or make some comments now? BC? You're muted, BC. Still muted.
Wrong square. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, if we're going to send the middle school students 2 days, why stop there? They've already intermingled, they've been in the classrooms, been with the teachers. We might as well just send them 5 days. Why stop at 2?
BC, that proposal was our original proposal. The plan that we're presenting tonight, which there's overwhelming support from staff, is to put all students in distance learning. So we will begin the year with all students in distance learning. They will not be on a hybrid schedule. That's the change from the original proposal. So preschool through 12th grade would be in distance learning.
All right.
I have a quick comment, Trustee Diaz.
Mr. Diaz?
Hey, I just want to make a comment that I really commend the district for seeking out public input and staff input and taking all that into consideration, making some decisions. Obviously, they're not always the ones that people would have expected, especially what was going on. But I also applaud you guys for then taking that data, taking that input even over the weekend, over the last couple of days, and still being able to make decisions based on that in turn. So I really want to applaud that, because I had a lot more input to say with the original proposal. And now that we're at this proposal, I felt a lot better. I can tell you that I felt a lot more at ease after I heard that and read that proposal. So thank you very much. And I also want to thank the public input. We received a lot of public input via email from staff, from public members, from people as far away as San Jose and other districts, I think, that had read our proposals and were very interested as well. So I want to thank you as well. So I want to thank everybody, and I'm glad to be working with you guys.
So
Thank you.
I'm going to go to the public comments, and at the conclusion of public comments, I'm going to open it up again for any board comments. But just bootstrapping a little bit on Trustee Diaz's comments, the district has done, and its personnel, obviously, has done an incredible job in adjusting to a constantly moving set of rules and laws from the federal government, from the state government, from the county health office, from the Santa Clara County Office of Education. And these things, all these different things, have frequently been in conflict with each other. And addition, changing on a daily basis. So how anybody can make sense of it, it's incredibly difficult. And I applaud the efforts. And at this point, I'd like to start the public comment period, 45 minutes.
Thank you, Trustee Good. The first comment is from Shannon Mira. Is the GATE Accelerated Program part of the Virtual Learning Academy? The next comment is Christina Carrasco. For my family and I appreciate hearing that it will be recommended to continue distant learning for this fall. For future reference, I would like my previous comments submitted so that there is a clear understanding of what parents of special needs could expect when our children do return to in-person class. What safety measures will be put in place for them? Our children require a lot of one-on-one attention from parents and teachers, sometimes coming into contact with multiple people a day to assist with toileting, transportation, and other physical needs. Will they be assigned one para for a whole school day? Will they have shorter school days? How can we ensure the safety of our child and our teachers? What will be the plan? From Christy Garrison. I disagree wholeheartedly with the plan to keep high school students home to start the school year and to grade based on a 100% online learning. It is proven that it is not an optimal way to learn. Both high schools have spacious grounds. Why not utilize space creatively? Continuing to isolate children who have been away from their peers since March is unhealthy and will result in depression and even more lost learning. High school should be the most able to safely social distance, so I would like to know the reasons why this is the proposed plan. From Yvette Lapalto, if my children start the school year attending schools, can they switch to the online academy if they find it's not working for them? From Amy Hernandez, don't reopen the schools until the virus is gone. From Monica Smith, why are the learning plans and safety measures so different for elementary schools compared to high school and middle schoolers? Doesn't sound very safe or reasonable for teachers, staff, families of other students. From Rob Rocha, all throughout Europe, 22 states that have opened schools 18 and under, there have been very little to no spread. For some reason, younger than 18 do not spread this virus. Also, 81 and younger, for whatever reason, have fewer hospitalizations than the average flu year. 1, no hospitalization. 2, no spread. So why is there no school? From Kristen Henderson, what will the DI program look like for elementary school? Are there any virtual options for children in DI? From Giselle Lopez, for the kindergartens, I think you should let the parents go and walk with their kids and show them where their class is because they are still young and it's their first year going to school. so that then after they know and they can go by themselves.
This is Melanie Corona, and I'm going to read the next 10 comments. From Tara Di Cariano, I have 3 children in GUSD. 2 are in high school and straight A students. I very much want them back on campus in a normal, structured learning, preparing them academically for scholarships and college acceptance to rigorous schools. My kids are not getting educated properly. My fear is that we will be forced to give substandard education, and it will possibly be pulled at home for COVID cases. I don't want my kids being pushed back and forth. It's extremely difficult and stressful as a 2 working household that cannot stay home. We are considering taking out a loan to pay for private education, but that's an extreme strain financially during a time when we are already strapped financially, leaving parents scrambling at the last minute. I also have an elementary student whom we thought would be able to attend on campus and now have to figure out what we can do for him. Last quarter, he had no ability to focus and stay on point. Need kids to go back to school or have alternatives to distant learning, even if it's hybrid or small groups. I just need support and alternatives if kids can't go back. Please heavily consider your decision and the impact on families' future and finances. Thanks. From Jalissa Lopez, I think that for elementary kids, we should drop them off to their classrooms and pick them up in their classroom, because especially the kindergartners, they are going to be new and they are not going to know where their classroom is going to be on their own. From Sarah Treat, in regards to reopening the schools in August, I would like to have some understanding why it is safe for TK through 5 to return 5 days a week, but older children it is not. It seems our little ones would be at higher risk than a 17, 18-year-old that understand the severity of the pandemic. My son is only 5. Dropping him off at the curb to have his temperature checked would be scary for him. Is there data that supports TK through 5 is safer in groups than young adults? I understand that TK through 5 is more at need when it comes to education in person, but this plan should include data on why it is okay for certain groups to be at risk and others not. All students should have the same safety available to them, and how you educate them adapts based on those safety measures due to groups' needs. From Kristen Henderson, why is elementary the only group that will go 5 days a week? Younger children have a harder time following hand washing, masks, and social distancing protocols. This does not make sense that it's the only option for children in DI, as 100% virtual academy does not offer specialized courses, which I assume DI is categorized as. We need more options for our elementary school age children. From Karen Feidel, high schoolers need to be in school for mental, physical, and intellectual growth enrichment. Terrible decision. Look at the low death rate of COVID. More tests equals more cases. Giving in to fear is a shameful thing. From Odalad Babatola, I would like to find out if the GATE program will be continued in this school year. Thank you. From Denise Negrete, keep our kids safe. Schools should be closed until we find a vaccine or opt a different school schedule, split the classrooms in half. Half of the class will attend school every other day, the other half every other day. But still our kids don't understand social distancing nor when to keep wearing face masks. As adults, it's hard to keep our social distance, yet alone remind ourselves to keep our face masks on. Imagine our children. Please, let's keep our community safe. We leave our children's education in your hands. Thank you. From Janelle F. Wolf. I would like to ask why us parents participate in surveys but are never given the opportunity to actually vote on whether we want our children to go back to school or choose distance learning. We should be given the choice to choose what is best for our student, our household, our choice for their education. Distance learning does affect high school students, and not in a positive way. Why are high school students being discriminated against? Why are the other schools being offered a hybrid schedule, but when it comes to the high schools, you, the district, not us parents, are making the decision for distance learning? From Emily Lopez, I strongly disagree with the proposed reopening of schools plan. I fully believe that all grade levels should be 100% distance learning for first semester. If you look at the health risk assessment for students and staff, it is incredibly irresponsible and setting the district up to be sued by students or staff who fall ill because of your in-person learning guide for K-8. From Jacob Jensen, I feel that a hybrid system, at least for the high schoolers, would work much better, as lots of my peers struggle with online learning, as they are not as productive and misses out on the feeling of actually being in school. I understand the concern for the virus, but us students being older will definitely follow instructions of social distancing and following proper precautions. As a final note, a lot of my peers are considering swapping to just regular online school instead of attending CHS. They'll find another way of getting proper teaching because a lot of the teachers don't know how to teach online and feel that with being seniors, their senior year is now ruined because they won't be able to have a normal school year.
From Angelina DiCariano. Hello, Board of Education. I'm an upcoming sophomore at GHS. I just read your email that you sent out to parents and students, a part of the Gilroy Unified School District, and the plan for 9th through 12th graders. I just wanted to let you know I'm very upset in this plan. I am all very upset because you guys are not allowing the 9th through 12th graders to go back to school on campus until further notice. You also plan to have us do distance learning online schooling for the fall. So that's what I want to address. This is from a student point of view. As a straight A student, I found distant learning very difficult. And so I'm sure other students who already had difficulty in a classroom setting have also had a very hard time during distance learning. So what I want to say is that I would like all high schoolers to go back to campus in the fall. Even if you guys do a hybrid, some days on campus, some days distance learning, that would be better than every day online. What I would prefer is to have high schoolers go back to campus in the fall. I say this because from experiencing distance learning and in classroom learning, the classroom learning is more effective at getting an education. As a high schooler, I would like to prepare to go to college in a few more years, and learning online is not going to give me the readiness to tackle a full college load of work. In conclusion, I would really like you guys to decide to let all high schoolers go back to school full-time on campus in the fall. Even if you guys have to take all safety precautions or even to sign a waiver, please let all high schoolers go back to campus and get the full education they deserve. From Mary J. Silva, I understand the younger grades will not be distance learning. How are you going to manage keeping young children from being too close, let alone keep their masks on? From Brenda Sanfilippo, for middle school students in the hybrid, will they be working at home on the days off campus? Are they expected to watch the teacher in the classroom with other students, with other kids? How will you be addressing 504/IEP? What other measures will you be taking to support safety? Your suggested measures are the minimum: no plexiglass, no outdoor classes, no fresh air, etc. From Yvette Lipitalo, if my children attend virtual school in the fall, can they switch to the school site in spring if COVID infections drop or a vaccine is available? From Randy Gomez, if a family chooses to use virtual learning for elementary age children, will they be allowed to go back to on-campus learning if things get better? Or will they be stuck with virtual learning despite things being better for the entire school year? From Connie Carrillo, in our third trimester, when COVID-19 school closures began, we were told that students would not get a final report card at Rod Kelly Elementary. Will students be graded for the Virtual Learning Academy? Will there be recorded grades to report with progress and feedback from teachers? From Noel Magner, thank you for listening to all parties involved. Please, when moving forward, take into consideration that as a parent, I have equal concern for my 5-year-old as I do for my teenager. I have more confidence that my older children will know how to conduct themselves in this new environment, whereas my younger children just don't understand these new rules. From Justin Humphreys, I would like to see a hybrid model for K through 5, modified class sizes, days or hours, students on an A or a B schedule come 8 to 11 or 12 to 3. That gives time for custodians to clean the room for the next day. It allows morning students to get lunch as they leave, afternoon students when they arrive. Our teachers can't be asked to be the teacher, custodian, yard duty, and lunch duty, all while wearing a mask. They need time to eat and use the restroom. They aren't first responders. They aren't compensated like a firefighter or a nurse. We need our students back and our children's too, but we need to do our best to keep people safe, knowing full well they're putting their health at risk. From Delilah Aldama, how will contact tracers be enforced throughout the school district for in-person classes? From Samantha, being that the start of the school year will be done with distance learning, will this stay in effect for the whole year, or will students go back into the classroom once it is safe to do so? How will it work for students who are in the dual immersion program?
From Natasha Katina, I am concerned about going back to regular grading. Considering the increase in cases and possibility of another state shutdown, how will those types of interruptions affect their grades? Do we really feel like this will be enough of a normal year to hold our students to those standards? From Robert Samdahl, elementary schools should not open until it is safe for all children to go. My children feel unsafe if people around them are not wearing masks. This involves children. My wife and I have been advised to keep our children home by their pediatrician due to COVID-19. The district has not done enough to keep my high-risk children safe. My elementary-age children need to attend distant learning to be safe. From Shauna Terry, distance learning for all GUSD should be until January at least. The teachers are not babysitters and their lives don't need to be put in jeopardy. Kids are getting this virus. Let's consider the long-term effects. From Monica Liu, will virtual academy school be at a specific time or can class be accessed at any time that day? How many hours a day will virtual learning be? From Suzanne Colbert, I originally made 3 public comments. One is no longer relevant. First, I would like to know how the high schools are going to support grading seniors. Due to COVID, there has been no contact with the class of 2021. Second, I would like to know the status of choir and band in the school district. My senior is the drum major of the CHS band. She wants to pursue music in college. She also is in chamber choir and is section leader. If music is eliminated, her leadership positions are also eliminated. How will you support the music goal of students in GUSD? From Tricia Mungal, how is the dual immersion program going to move forward with these changes? From Leslie Galvan, will the elementary schools be permitted to have assemblies? If so, can you give guidance on that? From Leticia Palacios, I am a high school parent. My children were greatly disappointed to find out that they will continue with distance learning coming fall. I appreciate the board's decision in being cautious when it comes to public health. Safety should always come first. My husband and I reassured them that they will do just fine and that they are not alone. We do hope, though, that the district is looking into resources so that they can open up the high schools soon, even if it's hybrid like the middle schools. From Leslie Galvan, if we choose in-person learning, can we have the option of changing into virtual learning later? From Leticia Palacios, question, has there been meetings between teachers on how they can increase high school students' participation within distance learning? I have 2 high school students, both with different personalities and learning styles, and neither one was willing to show their faces on Zoom for class lectures. From Paula Alvarado, I'm a staff member of El Roble Elementary and I'm concerned about my kids returning to school. I have a 4th grader and a 9th grader, and my 4th grader is in remission from leukemia, and he is my concern if he goes back to school, and we have an infant at home. This is very scary for my family and all the staff.
From Terry Garon, I think it is beneficial to have the virtual academy available to students. I cannot imagine kids TK through 5th grade wearing masks, not sharing things, and not be able to have social activities in cafeterias or playgrounds. On the other hand, with strict guidelines, I do not believe schools will be providing aftercare due to COVID as well. That makes it even harder on parents. I am an essential worker, and I have been able to work from home while making temporary arrangements for my daughter's care, and I'm having a tough time securing care. I used to be able to count on school from 8 to 6 and reduce costs. That is obviously not going to be the case. I am one of the lucky ones, as many parents can't even go back to work yet. Some don't have internet access, that I understand too. There's just so many what if scenarios, and I think the district needs to consider them all. From Paige Aguirre, will IEP services for elementary students resume when school starts? You seem to have a plan for increasing in-person classes for junior high and high school. Do you have a plan for elementary if you choose to close again? If so, what is it? Can it be implemented quickly and with less chaos than last time? How many kids will be in each elementary classroom? From Josie Bravo, how will children with an IEP get the support they need, and how soon will children that need to be assessed for an IEP be addressed? From Anna Hofaka, will there be an option for online classes? Is there an option for an opt-out of attending an on-site campus classes where we just pick up packets and assignments for the next week? From Lauren Squatrito, understanding that there is no ideal options for the upcoming school year, I must register my deep disappointment with the current K-5 plan. Choosing to have no hybrid option for K-5 while having ones for older students suggests the decision was based on childcare and not on the safety of children and staff. There is an online-only option for the year, but it is completely impractical for dual immersion students, as there is no communication regarding a plan to expose them to listening to and speaking Spanish regularly. Returning K-5 students, all of them at once, full-time in-person instruction is not only risky for them, it is dangerous for the adult staff. It is too much to ask of teachers, especially considering they will no longer have parents helping them in their classroom and extra work sanitizing to do. I am also very concerned about the school's ability to follow my son's 504 plan for food allergies. How will the school ensure my child's classroom is nut-free? Since my child has a variety of food allergies, what will be done to ensure there is no transfer of food allergens when desks are wiped down each day? Will his peers be required to wash their hands after eating? Something I've requested in the past, but was told the school cannot force children to do. It is incredibly frustrating to me that the district, state, and federal government have not worked together to solve the challenges of distance learning, which is a safer option for everyone involved. From Kara Solomon, thank you for doing the right thing and keeping our kids, teachers, and community safe. From Denise Negretti, keep our kids safe. School should be closed until we find a vaccine or opt a different school schedule. Split the classrooms in half. Half the class will attend school every day, the other half every other day. But still, our kids don't understand social distancing, nor when to keep wearing face masks. As adults, it's hard to keep social distance, yet alone to remind ourselves to keep our face masks on. Imagine our children. Please, let's keep our community safe as we leave our children's education on your hands. Thank you.
From Jessica Rivera.
Excuse me, this is Mark Good. I'd just like to make one comment before we continue. There might be, or it sounds like there is some confusion out there from some of our viewers who may not be familiar with the way a board meeting works. Typically, there's always public comment allowed, permitted, and encouraged before any board agenda item. So that's what we're doing. We would listen to the public comment. They're limited in time duration. In this circumstance, we have hundreds and hundreds of public comments. We're trying to get in as many of them as possible. So it may sound unusual if you've never watched a board or city council meeting before, but we're trying to get the public comments in. Not all of them are going to get in 45 minutes, but they will be posted, I believe, on our website in their entirety. But we're just trying to get in the maximum amount of input we can. And it's not a two-way. In other words, if someone has a question, we'll take note of that, but we're not going to respond. Otherwise, we would be here until tomorrow or the next day. It would never end. So just point of clarification. And I'm sorry for the interruption. Please continue, Ms. Corona.
Thank you, President Good. From Jessica Rivera, will my child be able to wear a face shield to school instead of a face mask? From Lucas Bissell, as a student of Gilroy High School, I find the plan that was presented to me to be completely atrocious. Students, especially students that are of high school age like myself, need to have contact outside of distance learning. I found that the distance learning that took place toward the end of the last semester to be very unhelpful and advanced my understanding of my classes. And I was very lucky to not have finals in those classes because I would have been completely underprepared for them, as I was incapable of having productive one-on-one meetings with my teachers. This was in no way the fault of my teachers, as my respect for them went up exponentially because of their capability to try to teach us through these times. But the distance learning was unacceptable for me. As much as us students need in-person instruction, we need in-person social contact at school as well. The interactions high schoolers go through at school is some of the most crucial moments of our lives in terms of forming our character, and distance learning can in no way possibly provide that. We need to actually go to school, and it needs to happen at the beginning of the school year because distance learning will severely underprepare us for higher education and our lives post-college. I'm asking all of us to think this through and see that we are in no danger, and that even if we were, we cannot halt our lives as we aren't getting any younger. Please reconsider this.
This comment was originally submitted in Spanish. From Sofia Montiel, I want to know how the children will attend classes.
From Michael Sandoval, GUSD reopening. My family is concerned that we would be unnecessarily risking the health of our children, teachers, and school staff if we send kids back to school for any number of days per week. Considering the recent increase in COVID-19 cases, it does not make sense to reopen school with students gathering into cohorts where it is encouraged to wash hands and maintain safe distances. In March, I personally knew one person who tested positive for COVID-19. In July alone, I personally know of at least 5 people who have tested positive and several others that were exposed that are currently waiting for their test results. The reopening of businesses and false sense of safety has backfired, and the consequences are very tangible to me. I believe GUSD should change plans and move to 100% distance learning at the beginning of the school year, and as already planned, evaluate on a monthly basis if it is safe for students to start returning to campuses. How many students or teachers will have to contract COVID-19 and expose cohorts and at-risk family members before we shut down schools and move to 100% distance learning in the end? From Linda Sotelo, I am very concerned about our school reopening. I feel that it's way too soon, that we should wait longer and go through this till this has been under control with no up and down on this health crisis. It's not safe for our staff nor our kids. There is so much that needs to be done on a day-to-day plan. I am a concerned parent. From Sabrina Acosta, I don't feel comfortable with my children going back into the classroom. From KP, I want my kids to go to CHS in school. Both parents work full-time. How are we supposed to help them with learning? My daughter is already showing signs of depression from being stuck at home and not being around her friend. From Tom Vanderswag, for electives and extracurricular activities that require hands-on participation, how are those classes being handled in the fall for CHS? Are they just not to be available, or what is the idea? From a concerned parent, disappointed at the options you have proposed for reopening schools, especially for dual immersion students. From the proposal, it looks like if an elementary student wants to continue in the dual immersion program, the only option available to him or her is in person, without face masks, in class, or reduced class sizes, or the ability to properly social distance. Will you be having the DI teachers switch in and out of the classrooms as well, which potential exposes the students and teachers to even more students? The parents of DI students deserve more options.
From Jessica Sestatia, what will happen to the support staff if distance learning happens, especially for the high school level? From Amanda, I just don't feel comfortable sending my two little ones back to school, especially with new cases rising. I understand they need more in-person contact, but still there isn't a better, more safer way. From Sandra Garcia, it is not safe to open up and use our kids as experimental rats and find out if it's safe to open. Many kids have health issues and will not survive if they get infected. 40 educated adults that know how to social distance and wear a face mask properly had to quarantine at one meeting. I don't see how kids are going to go to school, and when there is an outbreak happening at school, everyone has to quarantine. And yes, there is a COVID at school. People send their kids with a cold, flu, stomachache, headache, throwing up, and diarrhea. Maybe a kid has it and just doesn't show all the symptoms at school like a fever, yet they are there. This virus is airborne all over the school. A kid wakes up with a fever at 6:30, gets Motrin, given no more fever by temp check at school because parents are in need of money, can't miss a day of work. My nephews, who are elementary students, all came out positive here in Gilroy, and so were their parents. The results didn't come back 2 weeks later, and yet the kids would have been going to school because they didn't have a fever or felt that sick, but spreading it at school. My kids will not be attending in-campus school. From Brianna Jones. I have second grade twins enrolled at Luigi Aprea. I did notice that nowhere in this rollout plan are there callouts to student to teacher ratios being reduced. Currently 28:1 is not an effective classroom size with this pandemic. Additionally, who is going to be paying for the additional cleaning supplies and performing these daily plus sanitation exercises? Currently, teachers have to pay out of their own pockets for classroom supplies as it is, and parents end up donating some items, but not enough. We as parents demand a much better plan than just saying there will be hand sanitizing stations in classrooms and around campuses. Teachers with such high student ratios cannot handle the additional cleaning on top of buying what is needed to keep things disinfected, all while you have eliminated any parent help in the classroom. You are asking us parents to decide between sending our students to in-class instruction, which will hugely increase our family's risk of infection, so that we parents can keep working, or keep our children home and educate them ourselves, which is impossible to do with such young children, and have us risk losing our own jobs so we can become teachers without pay and or experience. And what about those of us with children who have special needs or education requirements like 504s or IEPs? From Sylvia Mendoza, please provide a distance learning option for TK. From Nicole Avelantimant, if we sign our elementary students up for student learning, are we required to do that for the entire year, even if the virus calms down? At this point in time, I do not feel that sending my child to school every day is a wise choice. However, she loves school and desperately wants to return. I do not want to be locked into distance learning all year because we do not know what the future holds. Also, what is the plan for DI elementary students? From Ignacia Rivas, I do not think we should reopen. Kids can get COVID and spread. They present different symptoms and can get worse after recovering from COVID. Not worth the risk to teachers or the community. From Tom Vanderswag, for electives and extracurricular activities that require hands-on participation, how are these classes being handled in the fall for CHS? And will they just not be available, or what is the idea? From Edith Perez, my student is supposed to start the DI program in the fall. I am interested in her being part of this program. However, I do not feel comfortable sending her to school. The option of the DI program online has not been given to us at this point, but I do hope there will be an option for students so they don't miss out on the program. From Ana Reda de Vidales, I do not think it is safe for elementary to go back full time. Cases are increasing and the younger kids do know how to social distance. Too many households will get mixed up through our little ones.
From Luis Miranda, don't feel schools should be open before vaccine is available. If school is reopened before, it should be up to individuals' parents whether their child would attend or not. From Shannon Delgado, I have a kid in high school and in junior high, and distant learning was so bad in our household. We would lose service from Wi-Fi sometimes. My kids couldn't even log in, and no, I will not go sit in a vehicle all day to get Wi-Fi when I have 4 kids total, and my kids' login times were different. My daughter went from A's to CD because she couldn't understand things as in a classroom. She could have raised her hand to ask the question, then get the help, then not later. And they would get handouts for information and do worksheets to go over what they just learned. I think higher grades need to go back to class setting as the information they need to learn for college is prominent in their future. And I don't want distant learning to jeopardize my kids' education and future. They understand the virus more than little kids and could handle more wearing a mask all day. From Karen Bolt, send the kids back to school. They need on-site learning. High schoolers need socialization. All children do. The benefits outweigh the risks. What about our seniors? They deserve all of the activities that go along with it. All sports should be normal. Read the data on COVID-19. More testing means more cases. Outstandingly low death rate. Put it all into perspective. Send the kids to school. From Colleen Chapman. Good evening, esteemed members of the board, Dr. Flores and cabinet members. I would like to speak about the proposal for K-5 students, teachers, and staff to return to school. Throughout the summer, I have been thinking about what a hybrid model looks like, but never did I think we would be returning to school with a full class size and no social distancing required in the classroom, except that teachers are to stay 6 feet away from students. Our little scholars don't know how to social distance, efficiently wear masks, or wash their hands. I am trying to remain positive in my commentary, but I would be remiss to say that I have never felt more underappreciated as a teacher in my 21 plus years in education than I do at this moment. Our teachers' and students' health doesn't seem to be a factor in this decision whatsoever. There is no conclusive evidence that I have seen thus far that says children are safe from the effects of COVID, although there is evidence that has shown that children can and do get very sick as a result of COVID-19, and they can also spread it while asymptomatic. The data being used isn't accurate because there isn't any data that is measurable. The numbers of school outbreaks are low because in the last 5 months, most schools have been teaching remotely. The reason that children haven't been exposed to such an extent is because they haven't been at school. What happened to reducing class size and hybrid model? Splitting our classes in half and setting up the schedule with 2 days at school and 3 days at home could work. This would allow for spacing the students out and following the CDC guidelines a little more closely and might potentially help with lowering community spread of COVID. Is that out because it isn't a viable option for parents needing childcare when they return to work? From Jennifer Wetzel, I am baffled by this proposal for the fall 2020 school year. All grades should adopt a hybrid form. I fully support what is planned for the middle school campuses. I do not support elementary school children being on campus 5 days a week. Those ages are most likely to spread COVID-19 and take it home to a more susceptible family members. Have you been in a kindergarten classroom? I volunteered a lot of time in the elementary school my children attended when we lived in San Jose. There are constant snotty noses, coughing and sneezing children throughout the entire school year. A good portion of those children wipe their noses on their shirts, arms, hands, and do not use tissues or sanitizer. They often cough and sneeze into the air. It makes no sense to expose teachers in these families' homes to a very rapid spread of COVID-19. I do not support high school going to full distance learning. They must have a teacher present in front of them with hands-on lessons to learn. You absolutely cannot replace a teacher with a screen. Our children will suffer severely educationally, mentally, and emotionally if you adopt a full distance learning plan. They're the best age group to keep their germs to themselves. They certainly won't be perfect, but they will be much better candidates to socially distance, wear a mask, and sanitize while on campus. I seriously hope this proposed plan is not what we see at the open of the 2020 school year. I think it's detrimental to our children and families on so many levels. These kids must have teachers and peers around them once or twice a week. They absolutely cannot thrive on full distance learning. You'll be trading COVID-related deaths for suicides. These children need an outlet outside of their homes. Their lives depend on it. From Jill Wall, what requirements have they put in place for the academy? Things were very different from school to school, grade to grade, and even teacher to teacher at the same school, same grade this past spring. I'd really like a picture of what the academy will look like. Within classes, are the children going to be grouped in smaller pods to reduce exposure, almost as if keeping students in their differentiated groups throughout the day rather than allowing the students to be part of a multiple small groups within a classroom of 24 plus children? From Carla Vega, my concern without having control of COVID-19 and numbers still rising, why are elementary students not required to wear face masks when they're in the classroom around other children when it is state mandated that everyone wears one when out in public and around people who you do not live with? And how is that safe for them and siblings, many of them at home who don't yet attend school? My 3-year-old gets sick every time the 9-year-old comes home with the flu or cough she's picked up from school, every single time. I'm worried the same will happen with COVID-19. There are many flaws with the proposed plan to reopen elementary schools, and I ask that you revise and give the community a more thought-out plan or switch everyone to virtual learning to further protect the safety of our children. Pay the teacher the same as in-person learning, if not even more. They have been amazing during these troubling times, helping students to the best of our ability, and deserve to have a safe plan for teaching this coming school year. From Jennifer Mariscal, I am very concerned about students and teachers being exposed. The teachers have families and will expose more people or have to not see their own family. That is way too high of a price to pay. My son lives with roommates and they are all being tested. One roommate, along with her 5-month-old baby, have active COVID, confirmed by testing. They are sick. We are scared. Do not expose more people. I don't wish this to happen to anyone else. We aren't ready to open schools. From Joaquina Zulia, I think it's not okay to have elementary students go back to school. I think everyone should be on distance learning until the cases get under control. Why should our littlest students be put at risk? Also, they carry it and bring it back to an at-risk person in their home.
Corin Cox, how will teachers be kept safe? Will teachers and staff be provided with the proper PPE when at school sites? Who will be in charge of disinfecting school sites? If teachers are expected to disinfect, who will provide the supplies? Will there be hazard pay for teachers and staff? How will specialized subjects be conducted during this time, such as PE, art, choir, band, etc.? From Corbin Johnson, will the children be assigned a teacher in their current assigned schools if they opt for the online program? What will the plan be if the school has an outbreak of COVID? From Melanie Smith, please provide more detail for the proposed virtual learning. Will the teacher instruction be like it was this year where children are in their class and can see each other, or will it be one-on-one? Will the work be computerized or a mix of worksheets and computerized? Will the district provide worksheets or will parents be required to print them out? How will the students be evaluated, graded? Will students be required to turn in paperwork for grades? If so, where will we turn it in? Will students get a teacher from the school they're registered at or a random teacher? Will the teacher be the same for the entire year? From Carla Alfaro, you have to think about the big picture here. If the child is symptomatic, he or she is not going to show any symptoms of COVID-19. He or she, however, will pass it on to other students who can bring it home and spread it to family members. You must take into consideration that a lot of people have pre-existing medical conditions which can make COVID-19 more aggressive on them than it would a regular person. Pre-existing conditions mixed with COVID-19 can kill someone. Think about the children who may be asymptomatic. Think about the children with pre-existing conditions. Will it be a responsible thing to open school back up and put our children at risk? I believe it is the best to prevent all measures and maintain safety, not only for students, but for their families as well. Please continue online distance learning. It's what's best for us right now until we can figure all of this out. From Janice Reynolds, I would like to address my concerns on the opening of the elementary schools. I do not understand why the youngest children of our community are being asked to be the least protected from the COVID pandemic. You're asking us to send our children into a crowded classroom with no mask. How can this be CDC guidelines when we are not allowed to enter any store or enclosed space without a mask and 6-foot social distancing? then you're asking us to put our kids in a crowded classroom with no mask. This does not make sense and is incredibly irresponsible. This age child on good days have multiple cases of the flu, lice, pink eye, and other ailments due to the fact they are young and constantly have their hands in their mouths and face. You're exposing all of our teachers unnecessarily as well. The alternative of virtual learning is a good alternative, but if you choose this option and you're faced with any kind of life change during the year, such as a job change, sickness, etc., you're punished and not allowed to attend your home school with your child's friends and familiar faces. Another blow to our kids who have no choice in this situation and have already suffered. This is discrimination. I thought the middle school setup with 2/3 days at home/school and smaller class sizes was a good compromise, but instead you're sacrificing the littlest ones. I haven't spoken to one person who is not outraged by this. There will be a breakout of COVID in this setup, and it will be the responsibility of the school for not doing at least a little bit to help make the classroom a little bit safer. We can't sacrifice our kids because children need daycare. They will end up sick or worse yet, die. This will not work. Our children will not be safe in a crowded classroom with no mask. From Margaret Longholm, we need a safer option for TK through 5. 1 teacher per grade is unacceptable for distance learning, and 1-year commitment is extreme. From Victoria Clapp, if daycares and everyone else are required to have children over the age of 2 wear face masks, why wouldn't they at school? The older children are doing online learning and younger students going to class makes no sense. Why wouldn't it be all the same? If all teachers had to quickly figure out a game plan for distance learning when this started to keep everyone safe, why is the plan different now as the cases are also on the rise? There's a better way that keeps both students and teachers safe across all grade levels. From Shannon Diemling, I support a full 5-day opening K through 5. School is a fundamental part of the children's emotional and mental health. This is not just about education. From Lindsay Becht, TK through 5 are going back to full exposure in August. This puts their immune system impaired family members at risk, as well as any teaching and educational staff that has impairments. From recent happenings around the country, we can see that children are not immune to this. The virus does not discriminate based on age, race, or social class. As a parent, I'm very apprehensive to have my child return to a full schedule without the understanding of how precautions will be taken and sanitizing measures will be met. How is one teacher going to keep 25 children 6 feet apart for a 6-hour period 5 days a week? How is mask wearing going to be enforced? How is social distancing going to be enforced during recess and lunch? So many unanswered questions and uncertainty. Those of us who take the proper measures to ensure the safety of our families are nervous about sending our children to school with kids whose families are not. From Ken Reynolds, I do not agree with school restart with the room full of kids, 25, with no mask. Do you think that is wise? Does that even follow CDC guidelines? From Bazi A, it is not safe and a public safety hazard to reopen the schools. There is no vaccine available yet. Children getting COVID-19 may die and are likely to have permanent damages to their organs, including their brains. It is unbelievable to me that are you even considering this? News just came out that no San Jose teachers are returning to the schools. That's because the teachers know the COVID-19 dangers. You're not only putting the children's health and lives in danger, you're also putting the community and teachers' lives in danger at large. From Irene Altamirano, this came in Spanish originally. I address you with the respect you deserve to share my perspective on the school year that is about to begin. I have 2 children, ages 11 and 17. I do not agree that my middle school and high school children are exposed every day going to classes in person. I suggest that they go 2 days in person and 3 days. Do it online from home to avoid the contagion, keeping the social distance to a minimum. From Liliana Torres, for the class of 2021 seniors, how will volunteer hours be dealt with? Will the hours be waived like the class of 2020 hours, or will something else happen?
From Angela Gunter, due to the virtual element of this meeting, I ask that you please provide the below questions and comments to the board rather than me speaking to them in the meeting. Who will be responsible for monitoring, contact tracing, and notifying families of sick, potentially sick kids, staff? What will be the process for communicating COVID-19 positive cases, enforcing quarantine? Will all members of the household of an exposed child, staff, be quarantined and kept from going to other schools? Has the board consulted with businesses that are currently doing this work, trace, understand the scope? I imagine this would be a full-time job for each school site. What is the thought process behind not requiring masks for elementary students in the classrooms? The public health report recommends distance learning right now, yet elementary is being expected to be in person at this point. If the virus spread worsens within the city, county, which it is, what threshold will the district use to determine a change of course, i.e. how many new cases in the district or how many deaths are reasonable to the board? While hospitalizations for children are lower than adults, they can absolutely be carriers and major spreaders to teachers and household members. I personally don't feel that in-person instruction is safe for the community. I do understand that some families don't have necessary technology or essential workers and need their kids to be at school. However, with school only going until noon, I don't see how that solves those problems for those families. From Melanie Smith, please provide more detail for the proposed virtual learning. Will the teacher instruction be like it was this year where children are in their class and can see each other, or will it be one-on-one? Will the work all be computerized or a mix of worksheets and computerized? Will the district provide worksheets or will parents be required to print them out? How will the students be evaluated, graded? Will the students be required to turn in paperwork for grades? If so, where will we turn it in? Will students get a teacher from the school they are registered at or a random teacher? Will the teacher be the same for the entire year? From Suzanne Colbert, can you please comment on how high school seniors can have any of the usual senior activities? There has been no information sent to parents, and usually this is covered in May. Information on SAT, ACT, and AP classes and tests. Information on senior pictures, senior crowns, senior sunrise, senior walks. How to apply to colleges you cannot visit. Scholarships or lack thereof. Online learning hybrid with local JC starting now. My daughter only needs one class to graduate. How do you graduate early? Will there be local scholarships? Obviously, there are no dances. My daughter is a drum major. Music, sports, cheer, club. From Rosalind Taylor, please don't make Gilroy's teachers and students guinea pigs or a statistic. Distance learning is the only guaranteed way to prevent the spread of COVID. You are endangering the lives of everyone. From John McKenna, regarding GUSD having elementary school children 100% in class, other districts in the Bay Area are not taking this approach. Why is GUSD doing this? What different data do they have that the other districts don't have? It's been shown that children can be infected with COVID-19, and the ones that are asymptomatic can pass it on to their parents and grandparents. How is GUSD going to ensure that parents who believe COVID-19 is a complete hoax don't send their children to school that in turn infect my child? What happens when the teacher is infected? Who teaches the class now? And does the whole class quarantine? And what about me and my wife? We now have to quarantine. And what those we work with? I am very concerned that the board has members that agree with the president and will endanger the health of our children to show they are not living in fear. COVID-19 is serious, deadly serious, and the board needs to start thinking that way. From Shauna Taylor, I would like to ask that given this opportunity to relook at how children are receiving education, including what fuels their bodies and minds to learn should also be included. With our two sons learning from home, they have been losing body fat because of more well-balanced food being provided at home. I would like to ensure that well-balanced meal option is also re-examined if the school is reopening. Bean burritos and pizza is not a nutritional meal for children's brains. Children cannot always make the right choices. That is why the school system, teachers, and parents are here to guide them. Putting unhealthy options in front of them and a salad and offering them to choose is not the right approach. This pandemic has given us the opportunity to really look at how and what we are doing. The fact that my sons have drastically dropped unhealthy weight because they are not in school is a testament to the fact that something needs to change in the school system food selection. Another point to this, child obesity rates are climbing year over year. Many parents unfortunately may not know how to provide healthy meals at home. So another point to providing only healthy choices, K-12 sets those children up to have a different perspective on what a healthy meal looks like. Let's push the limits and not go back to the way it was before because it wasn't working. From Kathy Souza, in light of the new recommendation to 100% online, I would like to revise my questions to be 1. Virtual learning lists, it will be a home-based guided learning program with oversight from an adult in the home. What supports will be in place for the student whose parents work outside the home and there is not an adult in the home during school hours? I'm thinking of a tech support if their Chromebook freezes or they cannot log onto the WebEx, unable to open a document program, or are not understanding an assignment during independent learning time, that type of thing. Number 2, will there be state testing this school year? Number 3, how does a family go about requesting a hotspot for use on virtual learning days?
Okay, and that does it for public comment. Melanie and Natalie, thank you very much. That was tough to read all that stuff, I'm sure. Go get a drink of water or take a cough drop or something. Thank you very much. It was also probably tough for the public to listen to that. I mean, some of the things I've seen, suggestions that we summarize and summarize it and make it more simple. I would love nothing more than to be able to summarize public comments and put it out. But unfortunately, we have a legal obligation under the law to let the public comment exactly as they see fit. If they say, I don't like Mark Good, well, they have a right to say that. So we don't have the legal right to summarize or change people's words. They have a right for public comment. We have to allow that, and that's what we did. It's a little tiresome. I'm sorry, but it's the law. So with that, because we're operating virtually and remotely, rather than ask who has any comments, I'm going to go down board member by board member and ask you if you have any comments. Make it a little bit cleaner. So I'll start with Trustee Doyle.
Yes, I was a little confused because apparently I didn't get the second outlook on what we're going to do. So apparently we're going to complete entirely virtual learning, correct?
Yes.
All right. I was under the understanding that the government would give us more money if we opened the schools.
No, the distance learning model, as was explained by Alvaro earlier, we will receive funding. Any of the models would receive funding, but there are strict accountability measures. And as we explained earlier this evening and in a memo yesterday, we are recommending distance learning for all grade levels. Yes. And we will receive funding, assuming we've met all those accountability measures that were discussed earlier.
My biggest worry is that the students who really don't want to be in school, like especially in high school age levels, if they don't have a parent there all the time, they're not going to clock in and be on the computers. And and unfortunately, we have the students that live outside of cable. If they can't afford to buy a satellite, how are they going to get internet? We can't afford to pay for it all the time. So I really don't like distance learning. Of course, I'll go along with the recommendations from everybody, but I really think we need to put the kids back in school. Thank you.
The one thing I would say about the students that aren't engaged, the law requires us to reach out to those students and find ways to engage them. And so that will be part of our plan, to engage all our students, because that's part of the requirements. As far as internet and computers, we will distribute computers to all the students, and we will provide hotspots for the students that need it. I think we have about 350 hotspots. Is that correct, Alvaro? So that's
correct, Dr. Flores.
Thank you.
Thank you. But another question, and I hate to bring this up, how are we going to govern? How many students do we have? 1,500 students just in the high school, and make sure that 80% of them who don't want to be on the computers are going to be there. Just how are you going to do that?
I know, Dr. Padilla, do you want to add to what I already said?
Yes. So in terms of the accountability plan, we will be going back not only just to regular grading, but also attendance. So students will be required to log into their classes, and attendance will be taken by all of their instructors. The way the law reads is if they have 3 days of an absence or 60% of their schooling, it is our obligation to reach out to those families and to make sure that they are engaging and give them ways to engage. Up to the point of bringing them in to the school site so that they will engage in their instruction.
Thank you.
Anything else, BC?
No, that'll be good for now. Thank you.
Okie doke. Trustee Pacino.
Thank you. I thought you were going alphabetical.
Nope, I'm keeping you on your toes.
Yes, you are. I originally was hopeful that a hybrid would work, but number one thing we've learned through COVID is flexibility, and information and the disease is changing daily. I have been for the last few months anticipating the opening, so I've done a fair amount of informing myself. I've reviewed the CDC guidelines. I've reviewed the state guidelines. I've reviewed the county office guidelines. I've really looked at videos from other countries. And so when people say, you know, Asia and Europe are opening up schools, if you see the videos, those schools and those classrooms don't even remotely look like anything that we would have in California. Those schools have truly 6 to 10 feet between each kid, and we just don't have the resources to do that. So when I saw the 5 days a week for elementary, that was my first concern. And yes, I've been on the board rep for the planning committee, and I really appreciate Dr. Flores having a board rep on there. And I've seen all of the incredible detail that is into that plan. What we have seen is just literally the tip of the iceberg for that plan. But 5 days a week without any kind of class size reduction really concerns me. And when the numbers have gone up over the weekend, and I'm going to just read to you what the governor says. Avoid mixing with people not in your household, which is kind of important at school level. Wear a mask, move outside, stay physically distant, and wash your hands. And that's what is being told to the general public. And yet we cannot provide that for our own kids. I absolutely understand the need and the desire to come back into schools. We don't build these buildings and hire all these people and have all of these programs not to engage our students. But this is really at a level of safety and for our kids, as well as we have 1,000 employees. And we may be able to control what our kids do in a classroom, but we have no control over what they are exposed to or what their life is like once they leave our schools. And then they come back to our schools with whatever experience they have. The whole idea of young people aren't getting COVID, well, in Santa Clara County, 12.5% of the COVID cases are under 19 years old. So yes, they are getting COVID, and that is going up. The idea, I get real frustrated with the comment, well, the cases are only going up because we're testing more. Well, the fact is, we have more cases, however we got there, whether we're testing more or whatever. Our rate in Gilroy is pretty high. At one point, it was the highest in Santa Clara County, not so much anymore. But when I started, because I look at the COVID dashboard, the county COVID dashboard every day, Trustee Diaz has been monitoring that every day as well. Our rate per 100,000 a couple of months ago was under 200, way under 200 when I first started looking at it. Today at 320, it's 507. So deaths are going up. And it bothers me when we say, well, not very many people die from COVID. Not very many young people die from COVID. This is a virus that we don't know much about. And what we are learning about it is we don't know what's going to happen somewhere down the road. We do know that worldwide there is a lot of research going on. Germany, for example, Harvard, Johns Hopkins. And what they are saying is even if you're not hospitalized, you will have some kind of damage, very likely. 50 to 70% of people will have some kind of ongoing lung damage, heart damage, kidney damage. Those are the big three. And they're not sure when. So I am not cavalier about this. And I'm also not an alarmist usually. I am not a fearful kind of person, but this is an enemy, if you will, that I just cannot live with the idea that our kids are going to be in school. And when we have so much ignorance about this, and we don't have enough social distancing for our kids at this point. So a lot of the questions today in the comments, we don't have answers for them. I'm sorry, but we really take our directives from public health. With the question of when can we safely go back to school? Number one, we don't know. Number two, public health will really direct that. We take our directives from them. So that's enough. That's where I am now.
Thank you. A lot of good points, many of which I don't have to talk about now. And you had more details than I did, so good job. Trustee Diaz.
Yeah, thank you, President Good. And you definitely are keeping our toes. Wasn't sure if I was going to be next or not. I want to start off again by saying that I appreciate all the input and truly am humbled by all the valid concerns that were submitted via email, personal communications, and via email and over this meeting as well. And I'm
You're muted. You're muted.
Okay, I'm back. And I took this position not thinking that we would be making decisions that literally guided life or death. And I'm even more guided by something that says that it may not be your fault for the situation that we're in, but it certainly is our responsibility to guide us through this. And that is our plan. And I'm also not a betting man, but if I was and somebody gave me an odds that gave us 100% odds of being safe, or at least safer, I would take that. There's no doubt that the most valuable asset that we have in our community for that part is the human capital, the humans that revolve around our education, the teachers, the students, the staff, everybody involved, the parents as well, the supporters. And so if you're going to ask me to make a decision based on safety, I will make that decision pretty quickly at that. So the plan that I see it's a really great plan. I commend you guys again. I doubled down on that actually, that it's an amazing plan. And so the only thing that I see is that when it was going to get implemented. And so for me as a programmer, I see the ifs and the whens and if this, then that situation. So I see like, well, what's kind of necessary is a little bit more conditionals in front of that, like when it would kick in, when it wouldn't kick in. And in turn, when we're in it, once we implement it, at some point it does get implemented. If that warrants that, at what point do we kick out of it as well? So for me, like in terms of being transparent to the community, I almost see like we need some kind of dashboard again. And we've used the dashboard analogy in a lot of situations for education. But in this case, I think we almost need it again. And it could be as simple as a street sign, street light, where it's a yellow, red, green kind of thing. And for example, conditionals are so many days in a row of decreased cases, for example, or at what percentage do we kick in? That being just one of them. Another one being infection rate, positivity rate, guidance from up above, whether it be at the county level, at the state level, federal level, that kind of thing. So I encourage us to be a little bit easier and quicker and in terms of transparency to the public, and so that they can kind of see and look at something maybe on our website that they can look at and say, oh, we're in the red, so we're not even going into that situation anytime in the next couple of days or something, or they might see a yellow, for example, and in turn say like, hey, something's triggering in a positive rate, and they may want to go look at that and see and inform themselves at that point. But that's all I have to say. Otherwise, fantastic job. Thank you, public, for your comments. We really appreciate that. We want to represent you guys, and every time you guys speak up, it helps us make decisions as well.
Thank you, Trustee Diaz. And one note, if Melanie, if you're listening, I noticed I had difficulty accessing the PowerPoint on the current plan that's on our agenda online. I couldn't access it. And I've seen some comments from other people, they couldn't as well. So maybe you could take a look at that.
We'll take care of it, President Good.
And next I will ask Trustee Fiak for her comments and questions.
So thank you for the presentation and for the flexibility. You know, we were headed one way and then new information was brought up, and then so now we're heading a different way. And I think that's in the best interest of our teachers, staff, and students. One of the concerns I have, and just to clarify, so we currently have a 1-to-1 ratio for computer or laptops for all of our students, correct?
We will have computers in the hands of every student. We talked about that yesterday, and Deb can add. Deb has become our unofficial coordinator of distributions of computers. But yes, our plan is before school starts to distribute the computers so that every student has a computer. And Deb, do you want to add to that?
Yes, we're currently working on that plan now with the schedule starting on August 3rd. So we will be distributing Chromebooks at the school sites so that families will be able to go to their neighborhood or attendance area school to pick up their device if so needed. So we're working on that plan now, on that distribution schedule. And currently we are working on cleaning and organizing all the Chromebooks that we have in the district so we can have them distributed on time and before the first day of school. And I do want to clarify that that first day of school for Dr. TJ Owens Academy is August 6th for them. For everyone else, it is August 12th. So that is why we're starting the distributions on August 3rd, so that we can make sure that the students at GECA can have computers prior to their first day of school as well.
Thank you. My other concern is, as we know, there are a lot of families that are not as fortunate, and that school is a safe space for them, and that home is sometimes not the safe space for them. So what kind of supports are we providing those students? Have we recognized who those are? What kind of support can we provide them virtually or with distance learning so that they are in a safe environment?
I will say that we had a counselor on our planning committee, and she's been working with other counselors to do exactly that, assess who needs what. We do have community-based agencies that we contract with, and we have an individual school sites contract with some agencies, and we will be providing mental health services to students on an as-needed basis. We did do that in the spring, and Anna's on the phone, so here on the meeting. She can certainly add to this, but we have our own staff, and we're utilizing community-based agencies, their staff, to try to address the needs of students. And I know that the counselors are trying to come up with a way to kind of do a needs assessment at the beginning of the year to determine what the needs are for our students.
Yes, Dr. Flores, I add to that. We have all our community-based agencies that are available to help. So our agencies that were through School Link Services have opened up their services to all our students in all of our schools. And then again, with the contracts that we have with Rebecca's Community Solutions, Diva Diversity, I think I'm missing one, but we have it pretty well covered.
And just so you know, in the past, schooling services and PEI services were only available to students that were identified through those grants. And what was significant about the statement that Anna just made is they made those services available to all students. So in other words, you don't have to be eligible under the grant guidelines. They can provide services to any family in the district.
And so Eric Thompson has been assisting. So we have now a universal referral form that we implemented last spring that is available. The principals are aware of it, and we'll make sure that all the teachers know about it. All the school counselors know about it as well. So all they need to do is submit the referral form, and we can make sure that they it's coordinated for them to receive services.
Thank you. So my other comment, it would be, I understand that, you know, especially seniors, you're mourning your senior year. I have a senior myself, and I mourn for her. But I think at this point we have to realize we are living in a different world, and unfortunately we will never go back to what was, I don't think, just because this has changed our lives so drastically. So, you know, I thank the parents. I know it's been a hardship for the parents to be, you know, to be teachers and try to work as well. And I understand the hardship, and I mourn with you all, but I think we have to come to the reality and understanding that this is our new world, and we're doing the best that we can. I commend the district for doing everything that they can to support our students. And, you know, us as board members, we will do as best we can to listen and support as well. But there are some things that are out of our control, like COVID, this pandemic, and we are just all doing the best that we can. But we all definitely feel and mourn for our senior students, for our seniors that graduated last year, you know, for the parents that have hardships. So, you know, unfortunately, it is what it is.
Mm-hmm. I would make a comment. We've been talking about the seniors. We could echo everything you just said. We feel really badly for our seniors that they can't have a normal senior year. And so we've been brainstorming, and Deb's doing this work with the principals on ways to do some of the activities. So I'll just use the example of senior portraits. Those are being scheduled right now. They'll be done differently than we've done in the past, but we are going to be doing those. And we're brainstorming about ways to do some of the other activities. Obviously, we can't take them out on a boat and have 150 or 200 kids on a boat. We can't do that. But there are other ways that we can try to provide some senior activities as best we can, again, with safety being the top priority.
I think thank you for doing that for our students. My last comment would be, obviously the public has a lot of questions regarding the distance learning plan moving forward. Do you have a plan in terms of how we are communicating to the parents and families of what distance learning will look like in the fall?
Yes, we're working on it. Eventually, even with our first proposal, the idea was to eventually have a detailed, you know, and we had a document that we were working on that we were going to distribute to parents and staff. So that'll be the case with distance learning. You know, it'll probably include a Q&A after listening to all the questions. We definitely need a Q&A in our document, but we will have a document. I can't tell you when it'll be out, but sometime in the next couple of weeks, we'll have a more detailed plan. And I should mention, I'm glad you asked that, we are required by the state to have a detailed plan. And that will be presented to the board at the August 6th board meeting. It's required that it go to 2 board meetings. So that plan has to be developed by August, but obviously we'd like to get it done before that, but that is a requirement now. So the plan will have lots of detail once we are able to get that document together. So yes, that's coming. Should answer a lot of questions.
And would you, after you publish that document, would you consider maybe having a town hall so that the Q&A could be more interactive?
Either that or parent meetings and, you know, throughout the district at the sites. We had a SPAC meeting yesterday, and that's the Superintendent's Parents Advisory Committee. And I agree, it was really helpful to sit with a group of 20 parents and just let them ask whatever they needed to ask about distance learning this fall. So I found that format really effective. I don't know if the other people at the meeting felt the same way versus maybe a really big meeting, just one big meeting. So yes, we're definitely open to doing that, maybe at individual sites or clustered, obviously not in person, but virtually. Those kind of meetings, I think, would be helpful after listening now to 2 parent groups in the last 5 days, and they seem to really appreciate it.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. Trustee Pace.
Hello. So a lot of my questions and comments have been made. Linda is, as always, much better speaker than I am. So thank you, Linda. When I got the plan last week, I was reading through it and, a little surprised that it was go back to school. So then I read the county public health document about reopening, and on page 2, it just says, we think you should go back to school. So it's clear that the district took the inspiration from the county and implemented it. Since then, I think we've gotten a lot of feedback and had done a little more soul searching and thinking and come up with a new plan. And so you've had, 24 hours with this new plan. So I think clearly a lot has to be worked out from here, but you're doing great strides, and I really appreciate the responsiveness of the district and everyone to all the concerns that we've been hearing. And we've been hearing from a lot of people, and it's been great feedback. I have a couple, I actually have pages of questions, but now is not the time to go through them since we don't have the actual, in-depth plan. But a couple things that might be broadly interesting. So now that we're doing distance learning, will food service continue to be provided? And how will that work?
Yes, thank you for asking that question. We haven't even touched on that tonight, but yes, we will continue our meals program. We, as you know, last spring we had 7 school sites that served meals. We were serving, 20,000 meals a week. We served, I think, total, Alva, was around 300,000 meals over the course of those 3 months. So our plan is to reopen those meals. Actually, we've continued serving meals all summer. There's been no break. There's less participation this summer than we had in the spring, but we expect that to go right back up once we start our distance learning plan. So yes, we will be providing meals. And Alvaro, I believe it's 7 days a week of meals, right?
Yes, we fully anticipate that once the school year starts, it will ramp up to the 7 sites that we're providing meals, just to give the community a broader options as we go towards the year. Into the summer, we had to scale back down just because of our staff and our ability to continue, and then our numbers kept going down. But during the school year, we anticipate to ramp up again, and that is one of the key requirements. And one thing that we do want to continue to provide our community is those meals for breakfast, lunch, and including the weekend. So as soon as those waivers are available for the current school year, we'll apply so that we continue to take advantage of that flexibility.
Yeah, we do have to have these waivers from the federal government to provide the program the way we are and to serve it to everyone under 18, not just eligible students. So that's a key component. In fact, we had a parent ask about that yesterday. We definitely need, we believe that's a key component of our plan for the fall.
Okay. PE, what's the deal with physical education?
I'll have, we definitely talked about that. I'll have Kathleen and Deb respond to that.
So for secondary, we will have PE, and teachers will be meeting with their students based on the schedule, and there will be that expectation of student activities. So we will be focusing on all of the different standards, so parents can expect that at times their students will be doing literal physical activity, with their teachers. Other times they will be focusing on some of the other standards like health and safety for them. So sometimes it will not always be physical, but sometimes it will be more like a classroom setting. But that will be occurring throughout the year, and that physical activity will be occurring at similar to what it would be in the classroom setting, but honestly focused more on that individual. Obviously, we won't be able to do many team sports.
At the elementary level, well, at all levels, the PE requirement, the minutes were waived. However, there's still the requirement to provide physical education. So in the past, there were every 10 days, 200 minutes that were required for PE. That number has been changed, but we will still provide physical education to our elementary students, similar to what Deb was talking about, opportunities for them to engage in physical activity and including health education and nutrition.
Great, thank you. Community service. Tell me about that.
You know, we really haven't talked a lot about it, but we did when we talked to you in May, was it May? At a board meeting, we did spell out what the expectation was for this year, but that was under the assumption we would be back. And now that we're going to be in distance learning, and we don't know how long the distance learning will be in effect, because again, you know, we're dependent on recommendations from the public health department, and we'll be constantly evaluating the conditions. So we'll have to come back to you on community service. I expect if we're in distance learning for most of the year, that we'll make a similar recommendation as we did for last year's senior class, because we can't expect our students to go out into the community and do community service when we're asking them to do just the opposite, to stay home, minimize contacts, minimize trips out of the house. So obviously, if we're in distance learning for, you know, a semester or longer, we'll be coming to you with a revised recommendation on the hours for this year's senior class.
Okay, that makes sense. I think those were my broad questions. I want to echo Twins. Clearly, the public has a lot of questions and wants to have their questions asked and answered. So I strongly encourage you guys to figure out some way of getting in touch with them. Several board members have seniors this year, so, you know, make our senior years good. And
we'll do the best we can. That's a lot of pressure, but yes, we'd like to do that for all of our seniors.
Yes, I meant all of them, yes. People of Gilroy, wear masks. Thank you, that's all I have to say.
I would like to reiterate what you said about the public health department's guidelines. I think the document was 23 or 24 pages long. And I know we've had many people this evening ask, why would the district propose bringing students back and not requiring them to wear a mask in the classroom? That came right out of the public health department's report. We didn't make that up. That was part of their guidelines. So I know it's confusing to people, but we are obligated to follow the public health department's recommendations. They did give districts leeway on choosing your specific plan, but there were 24 pages of requirements and recommendations that we responded to in our original plan. But again, that plan is no longer being proposed. We're proposing distance learning, preschool through 12th grade, and that's how we'll start on August 12th in answer to several of the public comments about when would this start. It will start for students on August 12th, but before that for staff.
Thank you. So the board members pretty much covered every one of my major concerns, so I'll be brief. I will echo some of Mr. Pace's comments about when I read the initial district plan that we were going to have elementary school students go to school. I was shocked. Then I was told, well, that's the public health department's recommendation. I was also shocked that that was their recommendation. And so while I believe in science, that to me sounded more like science fiction. And it's kind of a simple analysis for me. Would I want my elementary age students, children, or high school or middle school children to go to school under these conditions when we have this many kids in the classroom, where we know how kids are. We know that the teacher has a difficult time without COVID with that many students. Would I want my children, to go to school? The answer is unequivocally no. Number two, if I was an employee of the district, any employee that has regular contact with children, any classified staff, teachers, would I want to go to school under those circumstances? Once again, no. So I am very happy that we're looking at a different plan, a distance education plan, because I was dead set against what I saw in the first one. And I think Dr. Flores mentioned this, but it might have been missed by some people. We have been obeying and complying with all health protocols put out by the County Office of Health Education. Despite that fact, when we've had kids come to school for certain events, and we had a particular event at one of our comprehensive high schools, we had small cohorts. I believe there were 12 people and an instructor. Each student temperature was taken, make sure they were fine. They were questioned, how you doing? Everything's great. And after one of those training incidents at the school, guess what? Despite the fact we follow those protocols, a kid came home sick and he tested positive for COVID. So that meant everybody he was in contact with had to be isolated, as well as the instructor, who could have no contact with any other student. So even when you're following all the rules, this stuff can still be spread. So it's dangerous, and we have to treat it seriously. Would I prefer that all the kids all go back to school? Yes, of course. They would get a better quality education. You wouldn't have the child care issues. That would be wonderful. But we're in a different world right now. And I think the health and safety of both the children and their families and their elderly parents and grandparents is a higher consideration. And we would be irresponsible to not pay attention to that. So I just have a few questions. In the plan, or what you're thinking about now, can you, and I think you talked about this a little bit, Dr. Flores, but can you maybe in some broad strokes tell us, how is what we're going to do in distance learning going forward going to differ with what we did when the COVID-19 epidemic first hit? Because I think it was pretty much universally agreed that it wasn't the best. We did the best we could for the most part, and we did not have 100% participation from students or from staff. So how is it going to be different now? Because what we did in the last few months, perhaps it was the best we could do with what we had at the last minute, but it was pretty much unacceptable. So how is this going to be different?
Okay, so I'll share again that the accountability provisions in the law for this fall are very strong. So every teacher will be expected to work with their students on a daily basis, as we outlined in AB 77 and 98. So first of all, that won't be an option. Students have to be engaged, and if they're not, the district's required, staff are required to find a way to engage them. And teachers are required to have daily contact with their students. We're going to be grading the students' work, so that puts us, and that there will be communications with parents and students on areas about their work. We didn't have that in the spring because we weren't giving grades. But now teachers, just like in the old school loop program, we have areas where there's communication opportunities between the teacher and the students and their parents. In fact, we had some great questions about that yesterday from SPAC, how that would work. So there's going to be a lot of communication with families, and that was one of the concerns we heard, was that parents and students just weren't getting as much communication as they were used to. Again, understandably, we are in a brave new world, or a brand new world, however you want to call it, of distance learning overnight. But additionally, we've learned a lot from those 3 months, and we're going to be implementing a lot of different changes in our program this fall, including some very targeted professional development for our staff. That's going to be really key, we believe, to providing a high quality distance learning program this year. As you said, it's not the same as having kids in the classroom. We know that, but we know that we can do a better job this fall. Working in conjunction with our staff, there were wonderful things happening, by the way, in many classrooms last fall, but we have great variability between our staff on, for instance, how familiar they are with technology. You know, we have that even in the cabinet, me being the most efficient. But, you know, we have a lot of training to do around the use of technology, the use of the software programs, our curriculum, our textbooks, our programs that we've purchased and adopted have numerous resources. And we want to make sure our teachers are aware of those, know how to use them. So there are a lot of different steps we're going to take this year, because we've learned from the first 3 months how to do it better, I believe. And Deb and Kathleen can certainly jump in on anything I missed there, but I think those are the major differences. Anything else you two want to add?
I would just add that I think we also have to do a better job of talking to families about school is different now, but this is school. It's not optional. We expect students to participate daily just as if they were in person. We have to support the families. This has been part of our discussion, is to support families who may not be as proficient with technology so that they can support their children. So we're looking at a training program for parents, but they need to understand, because we did find with a number of our parents that really they didn't understand that distance learning was school. They thought we were providing these activities or opportunities that were optional. So we have some work to do in that area.
And I would also say that in the spring, we weren't focused on teaching as much as on crisis management, because everyone, from the staff at the school to parents to students, the entire community were in crisis. So that was really the focus. So now we have been able to shift gears, and now we're going back to the focus on education for all of our students. And we're prepared for that. We have teachers that have been working on our committees, and I can tell you honestly that in a moment's notice, they are in a meeting to help us discuss what we're going to do in the fall and how we make this better for all of our community, our teachers and our students. So we are working, we are prepared, and we are looking forward to making sure that our students get the best education they possibly can in this new environment.
Great, thank you for that. Now, you mentioned development for teachers to help them, professional development for teachers. Are we going to include in our plan help and assistance in the form of workshops for parents? Because if we have over 300 sites where we have to provide Wi-Fi hotspots because they don't have internet, I'm willing to bet there's a deficiency in computer literacy in those households as well. So what type of support are we going to be able to provide to the parents who need it with regards to this distance learning and the technology requirements?
So that is actually part of our Chromebook distribution. We are working on parent training so that we can teach parents as they pick up the device, the basics. Right? From the very beginning of simple things. How do you turn on the computer, right? A person that's never seen a computer doesn't know, even though for other people it may sound like it's common sense. So we're planning those workshops for parents from day one as they pick up those computers, and we will be continuing kind of a parent training series that they can go in through webinars and other things to give that support. We'll also be working, and this was a comment from the parents actually from the SPAC meeting on Monday, that we are going to reach out and utilize our home and clubs, our councils, so we can do a Parents Helping Parents series as well, so that they can get that support.
Great, thank you. And then I think my last question is, where will instruction be delivered by the teachers? And can the teachers do it, or is there any thought been given to having the teachers do it from the classrooms? We have this amazing, powerful internet We have technology. I would think that teaching from the classrooms would be ideal in terms of robust technology and also in terms of giving the principals a mechanism for accountability and ensuring robust instruction was taking place.
That question has been asked pretty regularly in the last few days, and that's something we obviously will want to talk with our teachers union about having staff come into building. And some of our buildings have a lot of staff. You know, we could have 80 to 100 staff at our comprehensive high schools. So again, it goes back to, can we do it safely? That's got to be the question that we answer first. Can we have staff coming into their own classrooms and make sure that we minimize, you know, contact between staff? So obviously it'll be a safety question first. I can see the advantages, I'm sure we all can, to having a teacher in their own classroom. And we did have teachers ask that last year, if they could come into their classroom and do their lessons, some because they had internet problems. So that's something we definitely want to talk about with the GTA, and we'll be meeting, Paul and others will be meeting with all three bargaining units to talk about MOUs in the next couple of weeks. They meet tomorrow, in fact, for an initial meeting, the three union presidents with Paul.
Great. I can't imagine that going to an empty classroom that's been empty for several months and being the only person in the classroom would pose a safety hazard. I mean, maybe it would. Obviously, we need to look at that, but I like us to fully examine it before we discard it.
And by the way, all the classrooms are being thoroughly cleaned this month. The filters are being changed in the HVACs. I mean, we have, and this was part of our plan to present this kind of information when we were going to present our initial plan, but we have taken extensive steps to make sure our buildings are safe and clean and sanitized, all that.
Great. And then I do have one more last question, even though I said the last one was my last question. I thought of something else. Are we going to have in our plan a mechanism so parents can easily reach out to and communicate with teachers?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So, yes, we are going back again to that ARIES system as well. So we can use the ARIES communication. We can also use the same traditional systems that we use at in a brick and mortar setting. So parents will be able to email their teachers, and we will also be working on phone communication and how best to do that to get a hold of their teachers and leave messages.
Great. And I'm going to go through everybody again to make sure that everyone has other comments or questions out there. And I'll start with Mr. Pace.
I feel like Anna hasn't gotten to speak in a while. So talk to us about the plan for special ed.
So what we're working on a plan is that we will work with our teachers to be able to do some individual, small group and individual, and really facilitate how the pairs are being working with students. And so we will work with the teachers and the pairs to have a schedule so that they are able to work with our students online in groups and one-to-one. And then we are looking to have our related services such as speech and occupational therapy virtually, but in the services that are reflected in their IEPs.
Great, thank you. Trustee Fiak, anything else?
I did actually have a question. So I know that we open childcare centers for, or it's Santa Clara County Office of Ed work with some districts to open childcare centers for parents that are necessary workers. Can we consider something like that for our parents in our district, where we provide some sort of, like, maybe, I think like high schools, we don't, but for elementary school, maybe having some class at, Gilroy High, there's a huge building there, and having, the hotspots and the computer set up where you can distance kids. but they have some staff there to support. They're still going to their virtual classrooms, but they have staff there to support in addition. And, is that a consideration?
I would actually have to ask about that, because during the spring, they asked, the county office asked to create a child care center for essential workers. Morgan Hill offered to do that, and they actually had a pretty good capacity to do that, and that was never fully realized. There weren't that many families in the South County that availed themselves of that program. So I'd have to go back and ask, is that something we can do? Because childcare has been very prescriptive in the public health department's guidelines. So I'd have to go back and ask, is that something we can do here in addition to what Morgan Hill is offering? Because they were supposed to be serving Morgan Hill and Gilroy and San Martin. So I'd have to go back and ask that. I'm not sure. Our after school program could definitely do it. We could probably gear up pretty quickly, because we did actually talk about it, Kathleen and I and Mandy, about could we do it? And we definitely have the staff. They've had lots of training, but there were, as I recall, there was a long list of requirements that we had to meet to do it. So we'd have to revisit that, but I can certainly ask if that's an option. But I don't know if there's a demand for it. If the one in Morgan Hill, last time I checked, I don't even think they were at 60 or 70% capacity. But I can ask about that. I'll follow up.
Thank you. Trustee Diaz, any further comments or questions?
Yeah, I just want to say something in Spanish. So, para los de doble inmersión o los que hablan español, si tienen preguntas, sugestiones, preocupaciones, por favor déjenos saber. Si su voz es muy importante y estamos aquí para representarlos. And I just offered that they wanted to reach out in Spanish. We're available to all of them as well.
Thank you, Trustee
Thank you.
Diaz. Trustee Pacino, any closing comments, questions?
A follow-up to Trustee Diaz is that when we do communications with parents, please don't forget the Spanish-speaking parents. And if we have town hall meetings, that we, as usual, that we have a Spanish translation available for parents too. And when we started distance learning back in March, it was kind of like overnight. And I think everyone expected it to go away in 2 or 3 weeks. So it was a different plan. And I'm disappointed and sad to hear from parents who felt that their child's education was less than optimum last spring. So my expectations are that, and I think everyone, what I've heard tonight, all of our expectations is that we will have a quality educational program for our kids and that there will be accountability. I know, Dr. Flores, you mentioned principals dropping in on virtual classrooms. As a board member, I would love to drop in on classrooms if afforded that chance. Just like we did site visits with you, at schools, I would love to be able to do a site visit with you through schools just to kind of see for us also what's going on. We didn't have that capability. We didn't even think about, I didn't think about it last spring, but I would really like to do that this fall. And again, I want to give lots of kudos to everybody for flexibility. And for turning, schools are like a giant aircraft carrier, and we had to turn it on a dime, and that is almost impossible. And yet that's what we've been asked to do, and that's what we have been doing. So kudos to all of you, and thank you very much.
Thanks. And I have plans to do fall site visits. I'm not exactly sure how it's going to work yet, but I was thinking about that a couple weeks ago, that if we're in distance learning again, I'm not going to miss my fall site visit. So you will be invited, and we'll figure out a way to do it.
Trustee Doyle, any closing comments or questions?
Well, all my questions have been answered. Thank you, everybody. I just want to say thank you to all the staff and all the people that worked on these programs. I can't imagine how much work went into all the details and the planning, and then have to change horses in midstream and do another plan and get going again. So thank you, everybody. Your hard work is very much appreciated.
Thank you.
Okay, this is an action item. I would entertain a motion for approval.
Move approval?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
BC Doyle,
Yes.
Enrica Diaz,
Yes.
Gwen Fox,
Yes.
Mark Good,
Yes.
James Pace,
Yes.
Linda Paceno.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Good, can I say one thing? I know one of our nurses, Kelly Croft, is on the line. Is Sheila also on the line? I don't know. Oh, am I muted? No? Okay. You can hear me. Good. So I wanted to just recognize all of our nurses, because from the beginning of this COVID crisis, they have really stepped up. I mean, they've been there every day taking temperatures for food service. They've been at major events taking temperatures like our diploma pickups, and they've been on our planning committee, Sheila and Kelly, and have given us a lot of input. If we had gone with our first plan, they'd developed pages and pages of protocols related to health and safety. So I'm just very grateful to our nurses for the job and everybody involved. The planning committee, as I already mentioned at the very beginning of my presentation, they were all just amazing and volunteered and put in a lot of time, a lot of effort. I'd often get emails in the middle of the night from planning committee members that had thought of things that we should consider. So even though our original plan, we've changed direction, and I know we'll want to continue talking to all of our partners. That's the way I look at this in this effort, because everybody has just been amazing. I am so proud of our staff, starting with my own cabinet, Melanie, Natalie, Lucy, just amazing work by everybody working on these plans, and I'm sure we'll do even more getting ready for this next school year. So I just wanted to thank everybody, and I want to thank Maribel and Jose for making it work for me tonight, because I didn't want to have computer problems during this meeting. So that's why I'm sitting here in the boardroom by myself.
Thank you, Dr. Flores. Well spoken. Next, item 7B, selection of Vice President of Board of Education. I asked that this be put on the agenda because of Trustee Munchi's resignation. We need someone for the next few months until we have a new election and a new board. And it needs to be someone who has a guaranteed seat. And so because Trustee Paceno did the job 2 years ago, I asked her if she'd be kind enough to volunteer to do it for a few months, and she's agreed. So does anybody have any comments or questions?
Linda rules. I nominate Linda.
Is there a second?
This is BC, I second.
All right, thank you. Roll call vote, please.
BC Doyle,
Yes.
Enrica Diaz,
Yes. Thank you, Linda.
You're welcome.
Gwen Fox,
Yes.
Mark Good,
Yes.
James Pace,
Yes.
Linda Paceno.
Well, I guess I have to say yes.
You already said yes. Congratulations, Vice President Paceno.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Item 8, announcements. The next regular meeting of the Board of Education will be held on Thursday, August 6, 2020 via teleconference. Closed session will be held at 5:30 p.m., followed by the regular session at 7 p.m. The agenda will be available on the district's website by 5 p.m. on Friday, July 31st, 2020. And we all look forward to seeing that more detailed distance learning plan. Thank you, Dr. Flores. Thank you, staff. Wonderful job. And this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, everyone.